Title: The Nine Cauldrons, Volume I, Embers of Power. Chapter 1, The Ember in the Ashes. The autumn wind swept across the barren plains of the Nanling Mountains, scattering golden leaves like fading memories. In the remote village of Teng Yun, nestled between two jagged cliffs, life followed the same dull rhythm year after year. But this year, change had begun to stir. 15-year-old Teng Yun stood atop a craggy ridge, his arms spread like wings, his dark eyes gazing out at the horizon. Below him, the village flickered with lights as the harvest festival neared its end. The scent of roasted yams and sweet rice wine drifted up from the celebration, but he paid it little mind. His mind was elsewhere. For as long as he could remember, Teng Yun had felt a pull, an invisible tether leading him toward something forgotten by time. It was not the mundane curiosity of youth. It was hunger, deep and resonant, like the echo of a war drum in his blood. Tonight the dreams had returned again. They always began the same way. A burning sky, screams, a towering black cauldron half buried in the earth, radiating golden glyphs that pulsed like a heartbeat. He would see a warrior cloaked in smoke, wielding blades made of starlight before darkness swallowed all. He would awaken sweating, his chest heaving, his hands clutching at the threadbare quilt as if reaching for something lost. His father, Teng Hu, had warned him never to speak of dreams to the elders. "There are things, Yuner," his father had whispered one night, drunk on bitter root wine, "that should have died with the last dynasty. If you see them in your sleep, don't tell a soul. The heavens may still be watching." Teng Yun never understood what that meant. But this year, on the night of his 16th birthday, the dream had changed. The black cauldron had spoken. He descended from the ridge, weaving through the darkened trees toward the village. The familiar warmth of lanterns and laughter brought little comfort. He had to find his grandfather, Old Master Teng, a once feared martial cultivator who now taught calligraphy to village children. He found the old man seated alone by the ancestral shrine, eyes closed in meditation. The moment Teng Yun approached, Old Master Teng opened his eyes. "You saw it again." Yun nodded, but it spoke this time, a name, something like Heaven Ember. The old man paled, his hand tightening around the prayer beads. "You are no longer safe here," he said. "Tomorrow you must leave, head west, seek the Valley of Silent Fire. There lies the first of the 9 cauldrons." Teng Yun's journey began under the light of a blood moon. With a worn satchel, a wooden training sword, and a map drawn in haste, he left Teng Yun village behind. The path was perilous. Bandits roamed the trade routes and beasts born of demonic essence prowled the forests. But something stirred within him now, an ember of purpose. His first trial came on the third night when he stumbled upon a group of mercenaries attacking a lone traveler. The man fought like a demon, his spear dancing with silver arcs. But he was outnumbered. Without thinking, Teng Yun leapt into the fray. Though clumsy and untrained, his strike caught one attacker by surprise, buying the traveler a critical opening. When the dust settled, 3 men lay dead, and the traveler turned to him with a wry grin. "You've got guts, kid. What's your name?" "Teng Yun." "Mine's Chao Yifeng. You just saved the life of the last heir to the Azure Spear sect. Come with me. I think fate's got plans for you." And so began the tale of Teng Yun, the boy fated to awaken the legacy of the Celestial Cauldrons. Chapter 2, The Cauldron's Whisper. Rain lashed the cliffs of Firecloud Gorge as if the heavens themselves wept. Beneath a canopy of wind and thunder, Teng Yun knelt before a collapsed shrine, its ancient stones slick with moss, its altar cracked, but faintly glowing. The vision he had experienced at the Crimson River was no mere hallucination. A spark had awakened within him. Master Yan's voice echoed in his ears. "The inheritance lies buried where thunder weeps and flame sleeps." It had led him here, to this forgotten sanctuary nestled deep in the gorge, accessible only by scaling jagged crags and braving the tempest. The wind howled like a wounded beast, and yet Teng Yun's thoughts were still. He placed his hand upon the altar stone. The moment his fingers touched the sigils etched into it, sigils long worn down by centuries, he felt warmth, then pain. A brilliant light flared, and the world dropped away. When Teng Yun opened his eyes, he was no longer in the gorge. He stood in a realm of scarlet mist and floating stone platforms, surrounded by the echoes of chants in an ancient tongue. Before him hovered a massive cauldron, black as night yet veined with molten red lines pulsing like a heartbeat. The first cauldron. Voices flooded his mind, memories not his own, battles of old, wars that sundered continents. A primordial roar. "Are you worthy?" a voice boomed. Teng Yun's instincts screamed to run. But he stood firm. "I came to learn, I came to protect." The cauldron trembled. Flames burst from the ground, coalescing into the form of a horned beast, an ancient fire spirit. The trial had begun. The beast charged. Teng Yun had barely enough time to dive aside, the ground exploding behind him. He conjured a flame shield, barely formed before the creature slammed it aside like parchment. Every strike, every dodge, every breath was a dance with death. His clothes burned, his skin blistered, but within him something stirred. The flame. It responded to his will. He reached out. A geyser of fire erupted beneath the beast, sending it crashing into the sky. The spirit roared and split into three, surrounding him. Teng Yun closed his eyes. The chants echoed again, this time from within. He moved his hands in an instinctual pattern. The first cauldron pulsed. A dome of red-gold light burst forth, incinerating the illusions. The trial ended. The cauldron floated to him and pressed against his chest. Energy surged into him, searing, cleansing, reshaping. When he awoke, he was back in the gorge. The shrine was no longer in ruin. Flowers bloomed. The storm had passed. And etched on his palm was a symbol, the mark of the first cauldron. From the shadows of the cliffs, cloaked figures watched. The awakening had begun. Chapter 3. Flames beneath the mountain. The crimson dawn filtered through the ragged peaks of the Hengduan Mountains, casting long shadows over the winding trail that led into the forbidden heart of the southern range. The early morning mist clung to the trees like spirits unwilling to let go of the night, while birds remained silent, as if nature itself held its breath. Teng Yun, now far from the ashes of his home, stepped through the mists into lands where few dared to tread. His mind was a maelstrom of images, his father's final roar as the clan fell, the cold laughter of the Blackfire sect, and the flicker of a memory he couldn't quite grasp. A vision of a molten cauldron floating above a sea of stars. Each step forward was another layer shed from the person he used to be. Master Wei, the old hermit who had pulled him from the brink of death days earlier, walked a few paces ahead. He was a peculiar figure, half drunk, half mad, but wholly formidable. Despite his ragged clothes and unkempt beard, there was something about his gait that exuded confidence, like a tiger in the skin of a beggar. "Boy," he growled without turning, "tell me again why you wish to climb Firevale Peak." Teng Yun looked up at the smoldering mountain ahead. Smoke curled from its crown like a slumbering dragon's breath. "Because you said the first of the 9 cauldrons lies beneath its roots. If I want revenge, if I want power, then I must claim it." Master Wei snorted. "You listen too well. Most who hear my drunken tales laugh them off. You chase them. Are you brave or foolish, I wonder?" "Perhaps both," Teng Yun said quietly. Hours later, after scaling a crumbling stone pass and slipping past a den of fire-breathing lizards, they reached the stone altar at the mountain's summit. Teng Yun's heart pounded. In the center of the altar stood an ancient stone seal, cracked and steaming, its surface etched with archaic runes that shimmered faintly. Master Wei poured wine on the seal and whispered words lost to time. With a thunderous groan, the mountain trembled, and the seal split open, revealing a staircase descending into the volcanic earth. "Beyond this point," Wei said, gripping Teng Yun's shoulder, "there is no guarantee you will return. But if the cauldron accepts you—" Teng Yun descended without a word. Below, the heat was suffocating. Flames danced along the walls like living things. Strange illusions flickered, visions of his mother, his clan, even himself. Then, at the heart of the chamber, he saw it. The first cauldron. It floated above a bed of lava, enormous and black as night, its surface inscribed with constellations. Teng Yun approached, and the cauldron flared with white flame. Pain ripped through his body. He screamed as ancient power poured into his bones, muscles, and mind. He saw it all. The fall of empires, the wars of cauldron bearers, the origin of the Nine Cauldrons, not merely vessels of power but fragments of a celestial being broken in the dawn of creation. When he awoke, his body had changed. His skin glowed faintly. His eyes shimmered like starlight. Master Wei stood above him, sober now. So, the cauldron accepted you. Do you still seek revenge? Teng Yun clenched his fist. Yes, but now I see the path is longer than I thought. We smiled grimly. Good. Then we begin your true training. We have much to prepare for, Cauldron Bearer. Chapter 4. Shadows of the Jade Cliffs. The wind howled along the narrow path carved into the side of the Jade Cliffs, sending cascades of pebbles tumbling into the mists below. Teng Yun stood at the edge of a precipice, staring into the endless fog. Somewhere beyond lay the first of the 9 cauldrons, if the map taken from Elder Wei as his secret chamber was to be believed. Behind him, Lan Zhi adjusted her cloak, her gaze stern but laced with worry. We've come far, but I feel eyes on us. The closer we get to the cauldron, the more dangerous this path becomes. Teng Yun didn't answer immediately. His fingers brushed against the scroll in his robe, its inked characters glowing faintly with spiritual energy. The ancient text spoke of tests, of fire, shadow, and will. Only the chosen could reach the heart of the Jade Cauldron. That night, as they camped under a rocky overhang, the air thickened with tension. Ghostly whispers rode the wind. Lan Zhi sat in meditation, her aura pulsing gently. Teng Yun, however, could not rest. He walked to the edge of their camp, staring once more into the abyss. Suddenly the cliffs rumbled. From the darkness emerged warriors in black robes, their faces hidden behind silver masks shaped like serpents. At their head stood a man whose aura pulsed with demonic qi. Teng Yun, the masked man said, his voice a cold hiss. The Jade Cauldron belongs to the Nether sect. Hand over the map or perish. Lan Zhi rose beside Teng Yun, unsheathing her sword. We're not giving you anything. Teng Yun summoned his inner qi. Flames danced around his fingers, coiling into the shape of a phoenix. If you want it, come and take it. What followed was a blur of battle. Teng Yun and Lan Zhi moved in tandem, their techniques fluid and fierce. Teng Yun's flame palm clashed against shadow blades, searing away the dark qi. Lan Zhi's sword sang through the air, cutting down illusions and striking true. But the masked man was no ordinary foe. He summoned a dark mist that twisted the terrain, turning the cliffs into a labyrinth of shifting stone and phantom warriors. Teng Yun focused his mind. He remembered the teachings left by his father. The first cauldron trial was not just strength, but clarity of spirit. With a cry, he activated the flame seal on his chest, banishing the illusions in a burst of golden fire. In the heart of the revealed cavern, the Jade Cauldron sat atop an ancient dais, guarded by stone lions and pulsing with a heartbeat of its own. The masked man lunged for it, but Teng Yun intercepted him. Their final clash rocked the cave, bringing down debris and dust. When the silence returned, the enemy was gone, retreating into shadow. Teng Yun approached the cauldron, placing his hand upon it. A surge of ancient energy surged through him, igniting the first of the 9 marks upon his arm. Lan Zhi placed a hand on his shoulder. You did it. The journey begins. He nodded, but his eyes burned with new determination. 1 cauldron down, 8 remain, and so many enemies yet to face. Outside, dawn broke over the Jade Cliffs, but Teng Yun knew this light was only the beginning of the storm. Chapter 5. The Gathering Storms. The journey down from the Jade Cliffs was not a peaceful one. The path, once narrow but passable, had been reduced to rubble by the previous night's battle. Teng Yun led the descent, helping Lan Zhi over the more treacherous spots. Neither spoke much. both aware of the unspoken weight between them. The awakening of the first cauldron had stirred more than ancient power. It had stirred enemies. By midday, the two travelers reached the outskirts of Fengyi City, a bustling trade hub nestled at the intersection of 4 provinces. But something was wrong. Smoke curled into the sky in thin, bitter strands, and the city gates stood wide open, unguarded. "This doesn't feel right," Lan Zhi murmured, hand drifting to her sword. Teng Yun nodded. "Stay close. We should be cautious." Within the city walls, the streets were unnaturally silent. Market stalls stood abandoned, their goods left to rot. Shadows stretched too long across alleyways. A foul qi clung to the air. They found the first body near the central square, an old merchant, eyes wide open in terror, his life force drained entirely. More corpses followed, all the same, no signs of struggle, no wounds. "The Nether sect was here," Teng Yun said grimly. "This is soul harvesting." A rustle behind them. They turned just in time to see 3 figures cloaked in nether black leap from a rooftop. Swords drawn, faces hidden. "Teng Yun," one of them snarled. "Hand over the cauldron mark." Lan Zhi moved first, engaging 2 of the assassins. Teng Yun faced the third, a younger fighter whose blade gleamed with ghost fire. The duel was fierce. Teng Yun relied on agility and flame techniques, weaving between attacks. But something felt off. The assassin wasn't trying to kill him, he was testing him. Teng Yun's suspicions were confirmed when the assassin disengaged mid-clash, flipping back and vanishing into smoke. A voice echoed through the air. "This is only the beginning. The sect knows your path." Fengyi City was declared lost by dusk. The remaining citizens, few as they were, emerged to bury the dead and thank the 2 cultivators. But Teng Yun knew the real battle hadn't even begun. That night, he and Lan Zhi sat by firelight outside the ruins of the city, silent until Lan Zhi spoke. "They're organizing now. Before, they were shadows. Now they're armies." Teng Yun clenched his fist. The cauldron mark on his arm glowed faintly. "Then we'll need allies. We can't face this alone." In the distance, thunder rolled. Far away, deep within the Black Mist Mountains, the leaders of the great sects gathered in secret. The Grandmaster of the Divine Blade Pavilion, the Oracle of the Crimson Moon Sect, and the elders of the Lotus Heart Temple stood in a ring of sacred fire. "The boy has claimed the first cauldron," the Oracle spoke. "The balance has shifted." "The Nether sect will not let this go unchallenged," said Grandmaster Zhue. "We must act." The council decided they would seek out Teng Yun, protect him or stop him, depending on his next moves. Elsewhere, in a forgotten chamber lit by green flame, the masked assassin knelt before a throne of bones. "He has awakened the mark," the demon lord rasped. "Good. Let him grow. And when he stands tall, we shall strike him down." The storm was coming, and Teng Yun, bearer of the first cauldron, was walking straight into its heart. Chapter 6. The Winds of Betrayal. The wind blew with a biting edge as Teng Yun's party crossed the jagged cliffs of Mount Qiongyu. Every step forward felt burdened with tension, the air itself thick with unspoken suspicions. After the trial of the storm cauldron, something had changed. Teng Yun could feel it in the stairs, in the silence that lingered too long, and in the way Lan Zhi's eyes darted whenever he mentioned their next destination. The third cauldron, the Verdant Cauldron, was said to lie hidden within the forest of eternal mist, a place steeped in legend. It was where ancient sects vanished, where trees whispered the secrets of those who dared enter. But Teng Yun's focus was fractured. The growing power in his marks came at a cost, flashes of visions, whispers in his sleep, and dreams filled with burning jade and bleeding sky. As they descended into the forest, strange phenomena plagued them. Illusions twisted the terrain, and time lost meaning. One moment they were walking beneath sunlight, the next surrounded by twilight. They encountered remnants of long-lost cultivators, turned mad by the forest's curse, warning them to turn back. Then came the betrayal. During a night watch, Zirong disappeared. When the camp awoke, they found Lan Zhi unconscious, her spirit crystal shattered, and the map gone. Teng Yun felt a fracture in his heart deeper than any blade wound. Driven by fury and heartbreak, he pursued Zirong through the cursed woods. Along the way, he confronted his own darkness, the side of him that wanted vengeance without mercy. But amidst the chaos, Lan Zhi recovered, and her revelations shattered him further. Zirong had been acting under the orders of Teng Yun's old master, who now aligned with the Nether sect. In a thunderous showdown beneath the canopy of whispering trees, Teng Yun faced Zirong. It was a battle of equals, brothers in arms now turned enemies. In the end, Teng Yun spared him, not out of mercy, but because vengeance would not heal betrayal. With the map recovered, Teng Yun approached the verdant cauldron alone. It tested not his strength but his will to forgive, to let go. In that moment, he passed the trial. The third mark ignited upon his palm, glowing with a soothing green light. But as he emerged from the forest, alone and changed, Teng Yun knew the winds of betrayal would continue to howl. Chapter 7. Palace of Forgotten Flames. Ash fell like snow across the volcanic wastes of Zunlong Ridge, where molten rivers twisted through charred earth and obsidian peaks pierced a soot-stained sky. Teng Yun's boots crunched over blackened gravel as he led his dwindling party toward the Palace of Forgotten Flames, the rumored resting place of the fourth cauldron. The air shimmered with heat, each breath tasting of sulfur and smoke. Lan Zhi walked beside him, her spirit crystal now cracked but functional, and her silence a constant presence. Though she had forgiven him for doubting her, a quiet distance remained. The betrayal at the verdant cauldron had changed them both. Behind them trudged a new companion, Yao Qiren, a mysterious woman rescued from a Nether sect prison. Her fire-wielding abilities and ambiguous allegiance kept tensions taut. "This place reeks of wrath," Lan Zhi muttered. "Something sleeps here, and it doesn't want to be disturbed." Teng Yun nodded grimly. The fourth mark on his palm pulsed faintly, resonating with the searing heat around them. The cauldron was near. The palace appeared at sunset, a monolithic structure of scorched jade-infused bone, rising from the caldera of a dormant volcano. A bridge of cooled magma led to its gates, guarded by statues of chained fire spirits, whose eyes glowed with ember light. Inside, the air pulsed with oppressive heat. Murals of past wielders of the flame cauldron adorned the walls, each one falling to madness or destruction. This cauldron tested not the body nor the heart, but the soul. It magnified rage, stoked the embers of vengeance. As the trio ventured deeper, hallucinations took hold. Teng Yun saw visions of his parents' murder, of the sect elders scorning him, of Lan Zhi turning away. Flames whispered promises of power if he would only let go, of morality, of restraint. Yao Qiren nearly succumbed. Fire erupted from her body in waves of uncontrollable fury, her mind teetering on collapse. It was Lan Zhi who reached her, anchoring her with memories of freedom and resistance. For Teng Yun, the trial was worse. In the central chamber, before the cauldron, a phantom of his father appeared, condemning him as a failure. The room blazed white-hot. But in that moment, Teng Yun found clarity, not through denial of his rage, but in its mastery. He accepted his fury without being consumed by it. With a defiant roar, he plunged his hands into the cauldron's flame. The fourth mark carved itself across his chest in searing crimson light. The hallucinations vanished. The palace stilled. The chained statues bowed their heads. The trial was past. As they left the Palace of Forgotten Flames, the volcano trembled, and fire spirits rose skyward, freed after centuries. Teng Yun turned to the horizon where storm clouds gathered. 4 cauldrons, he said softly. 5 more, and the world will burn before it lets me claim them. Lan Zhi placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let the world burn if it must. We'll rise from its ashes. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Burning Sky. The sky over the crimson expanse blazed with unnatural hues of gold and scarlet, as though the heavens themselves had caught fire. Teng Yun stared into the distance where the 8th cauldron was rumored to rest, deep within the ruins of an ancient temple said to have been scorched from the face of the earth in the First Celestial War. It was known as the Temple of Embers. He stood at the edge of a cracked plateau, the ground beneath him still warm to the touch. Behind him, Lan Zhi and the newly rejoined Sirong approached cautiously. Though they had reconciled, the tension from his earlier betrayal lingered like a shadow between them. "Are you sure this is where the map points?" Lan Zhi asked, her eyes narrowing at the shifting horizon. Teng Yun held out his arm. The 7th mark, a flame-shaped sigil on his forearm, glowed faintly, pulsing in resonance with a force buried far beneath them. "Yes, this is the place. The 8th cauldron is here." They descended into the basin where ash blew like snow and the skeletal remains of fire-scorched buildings jutted from the earth. Every step forward made the group feel as if they were being watched. An ancient wrath radiated from the land itself. The temple ruins appeared suddenly, rising from the swirling mists like a phantom. Massive obsidian pillars reached into the sky, half melted by a long-forgotten blaze. At its center stood the gate to the inner sanctum, sealed by a ring of ever-burning fire. Teng Yun stepped forward, ignoring the searing heat, and pressed his hand to the flame. The fire curled around his palm, testing his spirit. Visions of past battles, screams of fallen warriors, and the anguish of betrayed oaths flooded his mind. He withstood it all, and the fire receded. Within the inner sanctum, the 8th cauldron stood atop a dais of volcanic glass. It was smaller than the others, but thrummed with a condensed, dangerous power, one forged from destruction. As he approached, the chamber shook. The Nether sect had arrived. Dark figures poured in through breaches in the temple walls, cultivators cloaked in flame-warped robes, wielding weapons born from shadow and brimstone. At their head was the flame-scourged general, a hulking warrior whose armor hissed with molten chi. "You should not have come, Teng Yun," the general growled, voice like grinding embers. "The power of the 8th cauldron is not meant for a mortal." Teng Yun readied his stance. "Then I'll prove otherwise." What followed was chaos. Fire and shadow collided. Lan Zhi's blade flashed with divine light, parrying torrents of molten steel. Sirong fought fiercely at Teng Yun's side, the guilt of his betrayal fueling each blow. As the battle raged, Teng Yun leapt to the dais. The cauldron flared to life, and tendrils of flame coiled around him. It demanded sacrifice, not of blood, but of self. To claim its power, he had to relinquish his fear of becoming what he hated, a tyrant blinded by power. With resolve, he surrendered his anger and doubts. The flame accepted his offering. A column of fire shot into the sky. The enemies were driven back, scorched and blinded. When the blaze faded, Teng Yun stood transformed. His aura no longer flickering, but burning steady like a celestial star. The 8th mark etched itself across his chest. The Temple of Embers, its duty fulfilled, collapsed into the ash from whence it came. As the trio escaped the ruin, Teng Yun looked to the horizon. "Only one remains," Lan Zhi nodded, "and it will be the most dangerous of all." Chapter 9. Palace of Forgotten Flames. Teng Yun stepped into the heart of the trial chamber, his senses immediately assaulted by the overwhelming heat that emanated from the flickering flames. The temperature rose steadily, intensifying with every step. It was as if the very air had been turned to fire. He could feel the heat licking at his skin, but he forced himself to breathe steadily, focusing on the path ahead. The Palace of Forgotten Flames, a name that was as much a warning as it was a description. The legend surrounding this place spoke of tests that would push a person to their absolute limits, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But Teng Yun was ready. He had endured trials before. He had faced the bitterness of loss, the betrayal of comrades, and the weight of responsibilities beyond his years. This too he would face. But as the flames closed in, it was clear that this trial would not be the same as those he had faced before. A sudden voice broke the silence, one that seemed to echo from all directions. "You have come far, Teng Yun, but this trial will not be like the others. You will not face an enemy to defeat. You will face yourself." The voice reverberated in his mind, each word like a whisper from a distant past. A figure appeared from the swirling flames, tall and cloaked in shadows, the guardian of the forgotten flames. Its face was obscured, but the weight of its presence was unmistakable. Teng Yun drew in a sharp breath, his hand instinctively gripping the hilt of his sword. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What is this place?" The figure's eyes glowed faintly with an unnatural light. "I am the guardian of the forgotten flames. I am the manifestation of all who failed this trial. I am the embodiment of your regrets, your guilt, your unresolved conflicts. You think you seek power, but you do not yet understand what it means to claim the 9 cauldrons. This trial is not about strength. It is about your soul." Teng Yun felt a chill run down his spine. The words of the guardian struck him with unsettling clarity. The 9 cauldrons, the ancient artifacts he sought to wield, were more than mere tools of power. They were a test of his very essence. If he was to claim them, he would have to confront the very core of his being. The chamber seemed to warp around him. The flames became more aggressive, rising higher, licking at his face as if seeking to burn him alive. But this wasn't merely physical fire. It was a fire that burned within his heart, a fire that reached deep into his past. The flames parted briefly, revealing a barren landscape stretching out before him. The sky was a sickly gray, overcast with dark clouds that crackled with ominous energy. The air felt oppressive, heavy with unspoken words, and there, standing in the distance, were figures he had not seen in years. Zhang He, Li Mei. The faces of those who had once been his closest friends, his family in arms, now twisted by resentment and anger. Their eyes were filled with cold judgment as they slowly approached him, each step echoing in the silence like the tolling of a bell. "Do you remember us, Teng Yun?" Li Mei's voice cut through the air, sharp and bitter. "Do you remember how you abandoned us? How you chose your ambition over the people who once trusted you? You failed us, and now you think you are worthy of the 9 cauldrons? You are nothing." Each word was a blade cutting into him. The memory of their betrayal, their departure from his side when he had needed them most, flashed before his eyes. But there was more. His own part in their downfall. His own pride, his own hunger for power had driven them away. He had sought the 9 cauldrons without understanding the cost, without seeing that the price was not just in blood, but in the very relationships he had once held dear. Zhang He stepped forward, his face hard as stone. "You think you can wield such power when you couldn't even protect the people who fought by your side? You are not a hero, Teng Yun. You are a man who has been consumed by his own ambition." The weight of their words threatened to crush him. Each one dug deep into the wounds he had carried for so long, the guilt that had festered in his heart ever since he had lost them. He had never fully forgiven himself for what had happened. Every victory, every step forward had been tainted by the shadows of their faces, the betrayals, the mistakes. They had haunted him at every turn. But there was something else now. Something new. A clarity that had begun to form over time. The years had hardened him, yes, but they had also made him realize something he had never fully understood until now. The 9 cauldrons were not just a means to power. They were a burden, a responsibility. "I failed you," Teng Yun whispered, his voice barely audible against the rising winds. "I failed you all. I sought power without understanding the cost. I pushed you all away in my pursuit of something that should have never been mine." For a moment, the figures faltered. The storm clouds seemed to waver, and the flames around him dimmed just slightly, but it was not enough. Teng Yun knew that simply acknowledging his past mistakes wasn't enough to erase them. He had to accept them, to move forward, and to forgive himself for the things he had done. "I was blinded by my ambition," Teng Yun continued, his voice growing stronger. "But I see now that power without compassion is nothing. I will not let the past define me any longer. I will make things right." The guardian's voice echoed through the chamber, calm and measured. "You have faced your past, Teng Yun. You have faced the darkness within you and chosen to rise above it. This is your trial. You have proven yourself worthy." The flames that had once threatened to consume him now dissipated, their fierce heat ebbing away like a fading memory. The oppressive air lightened, and the barren landscape around him began to shift. The dark clouds parted, revealing a sky that was no longer filled with storm, but with the warmth of the sun. The figures of his past, Zhang He and Li Mei, faded into the distance, their expressions softening as they disappeared from view. Teng Yun stood alone in the center of the transformed chamber, his heart still heavy, but now lighter than it had been in years. "You have passed the trial," the guardian said, its voice now tinged with approval. "You have learned that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to protect. The 9 cauldrons are yours to claim, Teng Yun. But remember this, power like the flame can burn as easily as it can light the way. Wield it wisely." Teng Yun nodded, his resolve now unshakable. He had faced his past, and he had emerged stronger. The road ahead was still fraught with danger, but he was no longer the man who had sought power at any cost. He was something more. He was a protector, someone who would fight not for glory, but for those who could not fight for themselves. And with that understanding, the doors of the 9 cauldrons finally opened before him. Chapter 10. The Last Ember. The storm was no longer just a whisper on the horizon. As Teng Yun stood atop the Windhowl Plateau, he could feel it in his bones, the convergence of destiny, of power, and of the final trial that awaited him. The sky churned with black clouds threaded with veins of golden lightning, each flash a heartbeat echoing the pulse of the world itself. Behind him, Lan Zhi, her robes torn and stained with the dust of battle, steadied herself, her gaze unwavering. The 8th cauldron had granted Teng Yun the ability to bend space itself, a mastery over the void that allowed him to blink between dimensions. But the power came with a price. His body trembled with every shift, the strain etching pain deep into his spirit. Yet he pressed on, for the map now pointed to the final destination, the Celestial Cauldron, hidden within the ruined heart of Heaven's cradle, a sanctuary turned graveyard of the ancient sects. Their path was not without obstruction. The cult of the Hollow Flame had returned, this time under the direct command of the masked Grand Vicar, a being of withered flesh and molten eyes. He spoke not with words but with thoughts, his presence infecting the minds of those who dared resist. "You have defied fate long enough," the Grand Vicar declared as he hovered above the broken temples, his arms spread wide. "The cauldrons are not for mortals. Return what you have stolen, or perish beneath the weight of divinity." Teng Yun's answer was silent. He stepped forward, eyes glowing with the marks of all 8 cauldrons blazing along his limbs. Behind him, Lan Zhi summoned her blade, forged in the fires of the storm cauldron and tempered with the soul of the verdant flame. Together they surged into the final battle. The Grand Vicar summoned spirits of fire and shadow, ancient souls twisted by the hollow flame. Each one bore the face of a fallen warrior, a reminder of those Teng Yun had fought beside, or against. But he held firm. The wind, the flame, the storm, and the void, every element he had mastered danced around him, forming a blazing sigil in the air. Lan Zhi faced the inner circle of the cult's enforcers, wielding her blade with precision born of pain and purpose. Her movements were poetry in motion, cutting through false prophets and breaking their chants. But it was not enough. The Grand Vicar unleashed his true form, a colossus of fire and bone towering above the ruins. Teng Yun closed his eyes. Within his mind, he returned to the first mark, the Jade Cauldron's heartbeat. He followed its rhythm through each memory, each trial, each pain. He saw the faces of his friends, his enemies, his fallen master, and the betrayal of Xierong. He saw Lan Zhi's unwavering faith, even in silence. When he opened his eyes, the sky itself shifted. With a roar, he summoned the last of his strength and stepped into the storm. What followed was not a clash of blades or chi, but a battle of wills, of essence. The Grand Vicar struck with divine fire. Teng Yun responded with celestial light drawn from the cauldrons. Their struggle tore the air, split the heavens, and cast shadows across the continent. In the final moment, Teng Yun leapt, landing atop the altar that cradled the Celestial Cauldron. With a scream that echoed through time, he placed his hand upon its surface. The world froze, and then it ignited. Light surged from the cauldron, engulfing Teng Yun. His body lifted, marks flaring as if drawn into the stars. The Grand Vicar tried to intervene, but Lan Zhi threw herself into the fray, driving her blade into the creature's molten heart. The scream that followed shattered mountains. When the light faded, Teng Yun descended. No longer merely mortal, he bore the glow of the heavens in his veins. The marks had merged, forming a single radiant brand across his chest. The power of the 9 Cauldrons was his, but it did not make him a god, it made him responsible. He walked to Lan Zhi, who knelt bleeding, but alive. He lifted her gently. "You found the end," she whispered. "No," Teng Yun said, eyes distant. "Only the beginning." The cult was broken. The heavens wept. The Celestial Cauldron, once sealed for eons, now pulsed with life again. As dawn rose over heaven's cradle, Teng Yun looked to the horizon, knowing that peace would not come easily, but this time he would be its guardian.